And calling his former attorney Michael Cohen a rat. But Cohen is not the only person cooperating with prosecutors investigating payments to women to cover up alleged affairs with Trump. National Enquirer publisher David Pecker is also admitting to payments. And joining me right now, Stu Zakim, former executive at AMI, the parent company of National Enquirer, now owner of Bridge Strategic Communications. So Stu, with a welcome to you, and I want to be very clear that you were not at AMI during the 2016 election campaign, but I'm going to ask you about how things work in the tabloid world like this. I mean, because you understand that and why Pecker's cooperation with prosecutors could turn out to be a problem for the president.
Well, thanks, Alex, for having me back. And yes, I believe that Pecker's cooperation is going to be a problem for the president, because clearly when Pecker got his deal, or the company got their deal not to be prosecuted for what they said was contributions during the campaign, he had to have some information that they really wanted. So clearly he's got the goods.
Okay, like what? I mean, how does a story like this go down? Someone talks about doing something, and what with this catch and kill? I mean, can you go over that again?
Well, catch and kill, as I think you guys have talked about a lot recently, involves when you buy a story, take it off the market, and it never sees the light of day. And that's done for a variety of reasons. Certainly if you're a friend of David Pecker's, it's to protect you. Certainly as he did with Trump. It was done to, and as I admitted to, help the campaign. So it gives you an enormous power when you have that ability to take something out of the marketplace to squash the story.
Is this just because he was a friend of Donald Trump's, or might there have been something in it for him as well, for David Pecker?
Well, being a friend is important, but there were a lot of things connected and beneficial for David Pecker as a result of this. As a businessman, and once again, everyone needs to understand that there's nothing more important to David Pecker than business. So as a result of this friendship, he sold a lot of magazines because during the campaign there was this insatiable appetite for the kind of news that they were putting out there about Trump and against his opponents. He also got better advertising rates because more people were buying it and going to his website. So it really enhanced his business.
So knowing how these things go down, or what may have been asked of David Pecker in terms of what he had to give up in exchange for getting this kind of a deal from prosecutors, what might that be?
Well, who knows? I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of secret stuff that goes on in these negotiations, and also how the Enquirer operates as a publication. So we can only imagine that it had to be significant enough that AMI and David Pecker were able to get off with not being prosecuted.
Are there questions about Pecker's credibility? Are they valid ones?
Well, you know, David always takes care of David, so his credibility can't be really questioned unless you look at what his motives were for what he's doing. Now, clearly here, obviously the government and the prosecutors feel he was very credible. They wouldn't just give this on a lark. He had to prove to them, one would imagine, we weren't there in the courtroom, nor was anybody watching, he gave them stuff that would validate everything he was saying. Otherwise, they would not have cut this deal.
So the Enquirer pushed, tons of pro-Trump stories during the 2016 election cycle. And you have the LA Times saying today that Trump seemed to defy gravity by dismissing, ignoring, denying reports of sexual misbehavior, tax avoidance, and opaque business practices. But now, nearly 2 years after he entered the White House, Trump's lies appear to be catching up to him. Do you think the Enquirer is ultimately now what could lead to Trump's demise? I mean, is there a certain irony in that?
Well, that's really an interesting question to ask. It is ironic, but if you look at the way the campaign has unfolded before and now the way the Enquirer's covered Trump since, there's been a backing off. So what they did during then can definitely blow up in his face because a lot of it was done, as we know, look at different instances that many times that we see the montages of covers, the different headlines that go across there. It's just an interesting question. I don't know the answer, to be honest with you.
So, Stu, yes, I'm going to remind viewers again that you were not there at AMI during 2016, but were you privy to the kind of relationship that Donald Trump and David Pecker had? I mean, can you speak to how frequently they would speak, length of conversations if they met outside of the offices? Was it a phone call friendship? Was it a dinner out friendship? I mean, what was that relationship like?
Well, it's a historic relationship. It goes back to the late 80s, early 90s. In those days, they were definitely friendly. They went out to dinner together, socialized, and I can't speak of what's happened in the last 12 years since I've been there, but there was definitely a positive relationship, an ongoing one between the two of them, to the point where Trump would make Mar-a-Lago available to AMI to host their board meetings.
So there was something in it for both sides, you would say. Everybody was winning.
Absolutely. It was a win-win for both. Why it was working. You know, Pecker got access, Trump got positive exposure. So there you go. It was a win-win.
There you go. Stu Zakim, good to see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A federal judge ruling the Affordable Care